Can't find my own final poll. All right, let's get it going. All right, folks, welcome Inside the Numbers with the People's Pundit. I'm your host, Rich Maris, the People's Pundit. Don't forget to like the videos if you like them and share them far and wide. The best place to follow me is right here, as always, peoplespundit.locals.com, peoplespundit.locals.com. All right, we're getting all these segments with the senior vote and a lot of things about age groups, right? And we discussed a little bit about the youth vote last week, and I'm going to repeat some things like I always tell you guys a lot. I may even tweet it once a day just to remind people. If a pollster did not identify a trend before the election, they then cannot become an authority on trends with age groups or other demographics, any trend that they didn't identify before. Why? It means their methodology, for some reason or another, we can argue what that is, was incorrect. So in the aftermath of the election, they're going to be doing something that we pollsters call chasing the weight. All right? Chasing the weight is bad, by the way. Bad. It's all right to adjust what you're doing here and there, but you cannot be chasing the weights. Chasing the weight is when you got an election wrong, and you think that probably significantly. Otherwise, you may not be considering chasing the weight. But you got it wrong enough, let's say, that you decide that you're going to do something different. And you'll look back on your results and you'll say, well, had I weighted this way, had I done this, had I done that, then I would have gotten the outcome of the election correctly. Nate Cohen is famous for this, or infamous, I say, for arguing after 2016 that had they and other pollsters just waited for education, that things would have been much better. Of course, he was wrong. Education was a part of that equation, but I argued even back then that, of course, mode and geography were equally, if not as more, perhaps when it comes to geography, more important. All right. And that some of these demographics can be used to set off red flags that you are doing something wrong, but that you should not use them. to weight your results by. They should not be included, whether you do a propensity model or you do rake weighting, just straight up. You should not do that. The electorate has to tell you what it's going to look like for that election cycle. It changes every election cycle. Nothing stays the same. The only thing that you can count on being consistent about political coalitions is that they will consistently change. So you must know what you're doing with core demographics and not chase the weight. And if you did do something wrong, you decide I'm going to alter this like Nate does, you wind up getting in this perpetual cycle of forever chasing the weight, the way that a crack addict first chases that first hit after he takes that first hit. It's the same thing. All right. So if they didn't get a trend before the election, they are likely chasing the weight, or they're not doing anything different and they're just still untrustworthy. Now, it's entirely possible that it's the rule of outliers. Every 1 out of 20 polls, roughly, you're going to get something wrong. And that's another reason you shouldn't chase the weight. It doesn't mean everything you did before that final poll was wrong. All right. It could just be that for that moment, you got a bad outlier. I think this happened quite a bit, and I'll say it out loud. I don't give a damn. To my buddy Jim Lee over at Susquehanna. I think perhaps he was just unlucky. Okay. And I hope he didn't alter his methodology too much after certain disappointing outcomes, because I don't want to see him chasing the weight. All right. Trust yourself. Keep going forward with what you've been doing and what you know works. And in all likelihood, you'll be just fine again. All right. This we have seen a whole lot of when it comes to this younger age group that voted for Donald Trump. And now every pollster who didn't catch that trend is now pretending as if they knew. It's like they're an authority on it. Okay. And I just want to go through a list of pollsters. I'm not doing this to shame anybody. I'm simply saying it matters. It matters whether or not you knew what you were doing or you saw correctly. You knew what you were looking at. All of that matters. All right. And no, I didn't even bother sharing today. It's been up forever. So I just assumed people would know. All right. I mean, if you look at the Yahoo News poll, and I'd like to get rid of some of these, honestly, because I'm getting bogged down here. What else do we not need? I mean, that's a lot of tabs. Let's get rid of all this stuff, and I'll just bring them up one by one. It's just that it's funny that it's very difficult all of a sudden to find some of the results from these pollsters, even though they're still linked to Real Clear Politics. It's funny to me that they still don't have their results right up. You have to go chase them. Okay. All right. So, and I can get rid of the YouTuber too. All right. First, let's look at Real Clear Politics. Here is the multi-candidate final national polling. As you can see, it does look very Trumpy, but this was not the reported number, even though this was a national multi-candidate race. This was not the reported number. You can see Forbes and Harris X have Harris ahead. ABC News and Ipsos have Harris ahead. The Economist, YouGov, who is a big part of this conversation right now, Harris was ahead. USA Today, Suffolk, Harris was ahead. Yes, myself, Tip, I feel completely caved, and I'll show you what I mean in a second. And Tip has been a very reputable poll over the years, but pollsters know when other pollsters take the easy way out. All right. And he caved. He heard it. He knew this was not going to be some dead even race, and yet he did that anyway. He gave the multi-candidate race to Trump, and the head-to-head was either tied or Harris plus, which I will show you in a second. A lot of pollsters did. All right. Scott Rasmussen did it with his poll at Napolitano, or the Neapolitan, whatever the hell he polls for. A lot of pollsters did. Morning Consult did it down the line. It was very, very clear, folks. This was not a hard election to poll. It was very clear that Donald Trump was ahead. Kamala Harris, in fact, was never ahead. So understand that when you see this blue, even now, I had been saying for a year more that Kamala Harris was never ahead. And now we find out with leaks and books and tell-alls and this and that, they never had her ahead, as I told you, because of course I got their polling, and I mean, I knew exactly what I was talking about. But anyway, let's look at the head-to-head, and you can see a lot more blue here, right? Here's tip, tie, bullshit. Ipsos, +2. New York Post, Murdoch Inc., tied. NPR, PBS, the Marist poll. Marist is one of the worst polls out there. And the problem with Marist is that they've been trashing people like me for pioneering alternative data collection modes. And this year, in the middle of the cycle, by the way, they decided to jump in and pretend as if they knew what they were doing with those modes. And we caught them making several huge mistakes, such as failing to block survey forwarding on your online sample. That means you could have given it to all your friends, folks, and they would have not known the difference. It was a tainted survey. And yet they did that, not only with their national polling, they did it with the Rust Belt polling. And of course, the first one we busted them on was the Sun Belt poll, what they call it. They can't even get their own, Laura. They can't even come up with their own damn names. We are the ones who broke it up into Rust Belt poll, Sun Belt poll. Come on, man. Give me a break. Get your own material. The Forbes Harris X poll was Harris +2. It was Harris +1 in the head-to-head. The Yahoo News was a little backward, actually, okay? Where it had Harris up by 2, but it was only +1 in the head-to-head. You can see what Morning Consult did here. Harris +2. Rasmussen, good for them. Trump +3. CBS News, Harris +1. New York Times and Siena gave Harris a chance. In fact, gave her a tiny lead if you rounded. All right, it comes to a tie. But if you looked at how the New York Times reported it, they really reported it as a Harris +1. And of course, Nate Cohen's battleground polling gave Harris this weird quasi path that, interestingly enough, mimicked the Keyes model. Okay, I mean, even though that was not even remotely close to what anyone thought would be, that was not a consensus path for Harris. It was the hope and prayer path on the side of the Democrats, which people like Lichtman, Derelichtman, as our friend Viva calls him, right? And others, gave her, because there was no path in the traditional sense, and the blue wall was clearly shattered. Wall Street Journal and CNBC came in very close to big data poll. CNBC was very close indeed, +2. USA Today, Suffolk was +1 again. They just couldn't give Trump the lead. And Fox News ultimately came in with this version, the head-to-head. They came in with a Trump +2 after they had some very weird stuff going on. They had Trump down in rural America in their poll before this, which was he was down by 4. They had Trump down in rural America, but somehow up by 3 in urban America. I mean, Fox News just doesn't know what they're doing. This was simply, I believe, them mimicking other pollsters like myself and Mark Mitchell over at Rasmussen Reports. That's what I believe they were doing. And I think it's honestly pretty clear when you look at the difference in the dates. All right. And then, there was, some of them we shall not be named. If you were to go through all of these and you would look to see whether or not the New York Times did 2 things. 1, correctly identified how the senior vote would break down, and 2, caught on to the shift in the younger vote, particularly voters under 45. And you'll find out that actually NBC News, to some extent, did catch on to the youth vote change. The problem with giving them credit is that their sample is so small, their age bucket is too wide. It's 18 to 35, which is not what an exit pollster will do, which is I'll show you in a second. And credit to Pew, at least, for their post-election survey, which is just, honestly, I don't give that much credit, because you can just go and mimic what you know to be true at that point, right? You're not really enlightening us with anything. Our pre-election poll broke down almost identical to their post-election poll. Their pre-election poll was abysmal. They missed everything. They had traditional voting groups for Republicans going in some way to Trump to give them like a chance, but traditional Democratic groups still going to Harris in roughly the same numbers they've been going to Democrats in the past, and so it gave Harris a lead. Of course, Harris didn't have a lead Of course, Hispanics did vote in large numbers for Donald Trump. Of course, Donald Trump did do historically well, the best we've ever seen in modern exit day, modern exit polling, and that's it among Black voters, and of course that younger vote. But if you were to go back and look at all of the headlines combined in totality here of all these polls that you see on the screen, what you would have seen was that a couple of them, especially the white college grad, is voting even larger numbers for Kamala Harris than they did for Joe Biden. That did not happen. Okay. You'll see that Donald Trump maybe do marginally better with Hispanics in some of these polls, but nowhere did they get, around 45% of the vote like we did, which is ultimately what he got. All right. Or more, according to some estimates, actually. Some estimates have him as high as 46 to 48% of the Hispanic vote. Black vote as high as like 20%. But I think it's a fair estimate to say he got about 16%. And of course, the youth vote is a mirage. Do you remember that? I mean, the same thing as the non-white vote. NBC News, Emerson, I'm going to take completely out of this bucket of shit pollsters and set them to the side. Because Spencer Kimball at Emerson is a very good pollster. And by the way, he's a very honest guy. When he gets things wrong, as he did in 2020, and by the way, he kind of knew he was wrong. Florida is a great example. He had Biden up by 6. Of course, Biden got his ass kicked in Florida in 2020. But not as bad as Harris did, though, right? Oh, God. But, I mean, he just said, I think I'm wrong, too. But it is what it is. We're out of the field. I'm not going to go back and change it just because I want to mirror or I want to herd the last minute. And it's like, you got to give credit to that guy. But he did catch on to a lot of these trends, and he's been a canary in the coal mine with me for a long time about this is not new with some of these groups. Donald Trump showed a propensity, a capability to do better with younger voters back in 2016 when he won every single age group in very important battleground states like Iowa and Ohio, and did significantly better than anybody expected in states like Florida. But nevertheless, it was still the case that largely a senior vote, a Republican senior vote in the state of Florida delivered Donald Trump that 1.2% victory that he got over Hillary Clinton. It was a close race. Now, there's another consensus headline you would have seen from this polling that makes a little bit, that we're going to talk about a little bit more today, which is that senior vote. You would have seen headlines like Kamala Harris is winning the senior vote. Trump may be doing marginally better with younger voters, but Harris is a lead because Harris is winning overwhelmingly with these women, these educated whites, and especially seniors. Voters 65 and above are now going to Harris. And they acted as if this was the first time they had ever polled something like this. And in fact, they did not. If you go, and why don't I have it up here and ready to go? My bad, guys. Hold on. Yahoo is just horrible. It's freezing everything. Hang on. Let me get rid of it. Yahoo's got to go. Okay. If you go to the New York Times poll from 2020, you would see very clearly that, in fact, the New York Times had Joe Biden leading Donald Trump among seniors. The latest poll at the end of their polling, at the end of their, their thing in the field in 2024, they did the same thing. And I argued what I'm telling you now, which is that it wasn't credible then, and they're not particularly credible now. I'm not saying that Donald Trump is not doing worse with senior voters. And I'm not saying that the senior vote shift to the left isn't real. It is. I'm saying that it is disgustingly exaggerated by some of these pollsters. There was one I needed to give a shout out to. It was the Economist YouGov. Yes. Now, the truth is, though, the Economist YouGov they did not do a particularly good job, which I'll show you in here right now. Why? Because they may have seen that the senior vote was still, nevertheless, going to go to Donald Trump. They just overstated how much the senior vote would go to Donald Trump, and they completely understated his support with the key demographics that actually delivered him the election. So why does this matter? Because now they're all pretending these headlines, matter more than they do. and that we're all supposed to take some crazy significance from it. Folks, the truth is, seniors are becoming more democratic for largely two reasons. Seniors becoming into the fold or already recently became, New York is calling me. I think that's, can you just do me a favor and make sure if that's her, Laura, I'll call her back. Okay. You hear me? Uh-oh, she may not hear me. Okay. But seniors now, the ones that have recently become seniors in the last couple of cycles, are more educated white and more educated non-white than they had been in the past. Like, for instance, when Donald Trump ran against Hillary Clinton. It feels like I'm 43, whatever you guys are out there listening. It's tough for you to understand when you're not that age that a large group of the 65 plus who voted for Donald Trump in 2016 are now dead. They're dead. All right. That's the way that's the reality of life, of course. And it's the reality of polling. Some of these groups are going to fall out of the electorate because they're going to pass away. And new people that don't look the same as that same age bucket 10 years before will then replace them. And those who have been, this is not happening now, this has been happening. The 60s counterculture, educated, fanatical leftists are now seniors. So once upon a time, the Mondale voter and the, Hubert Humphrey voter and, some of the most far left younger people did get older and become the most conservative voting group in the electorate. But that is not the case anymore, which is why and by the way, let me show you. I did not pull it up to show you what I meant. Okay. So here is The Economist in YouGov, and you're tempted to say, okay, they did catch that seniors are going to vote for Donald Trump. Good job, guys. Right. Except they were wrong about every single other age group. I mean, that's just a reality. Kamala Harris, let me see. I mean, I think they're pretty close with 18 to 29, right? They overstated her. Yeah, I mean, well, no, they didn't overstate her. They understated Donald Trump's share of the vote. They came in at about 34% for 18 to 29-year-olds. And of course, Donald Trump nationally won about 40% of them. They understated Trump's share of this Hispanic vote. They did fairly well with Donald Trump's share of the black vote. And I think that's probably right on the money. And they did fairly well with his share of the white vote. Exit polls had it around 57 to 42 if you look at the Edison Research exit polls. But the post-election surveys actually have it a little bit closer because Donald Trump's coalition was, in fact, less white, less old, and much more younger and diverse and dynamic, like I had been saying, leading up into the election. So they didn't get it right. So even though they roughly came close and they overstated Harris, of course, but it doesn't matter. They weren't really right. They jumbled up the different numbers and came close to the same result overall that others did. Even though they were wrong, they were still within the sampling error of being wrong. But the fact of the matter is, they were totally wrong about the coalition itself. So you can't now go and look at Economist YouGov polls and expect to understand what's going on right now based on their results. They're in the wilderness, man. They really don't know if what they're doing is right now. They're basically got a blindfold on, chucking darts at shit. Oh, it's garbage. That's it. And until another election rolls around, they won't know whether or not they're right. It's much better to look at somebody who did understand the mechanics of Trump's coalition. To be able to tell you who's going where, what are the margins, isn't exaggerated by these other pollsters, then to just take their word for it. So again, I'm not saying it's not true. It is true that seniors are becoming less Republican and more, I mean, they're just more liberal in general. All right. Here is what we told you before I show you the breakdown of how groups actually voted. Here is what we told you is a major mistake pollsters have. And you may remember this. This is our final national poll, released August 30th. I mean, it was conducted 30th through the November 3rd. It was released, like, I believe Monday before the election. May have been like Tuesday morning. Like, that's the final result. You could see it's a large sample size. It's about 3,000 interviews. And that matters because I'm not being a wise ass, but it is a way for me to get it stuck in your head so you understand, so you don't forget. In polling, bigger is better. Okay? In polling, bigger is in fact better. 1,000 or 1,500 will not allow you. I mean, you could do it, but it's not. Your weighting variable is going to be very, very low. It's not going to allow you to break up certain groups like age buckets into granular enough. Okay, yeah, it's not going to. You're not going to have a sufficient sample size for each subgroup. All right, I'm trying not to get wonky on you guys, but it really is the only way to say it right. You're not going to have a sufficient sample size to be able to separate each subgroup and wait for each subgroup and fully represent each subgroup within a reasonable degree of confidence. If you do, if you got, maybe 1,000 or 1,500, you could do it, but your sampling subgroup error, your subgroup sampling error is going to be significantly higher than ours is. All right. It's not going to be as accurate. You're taking a bigger guess. You're making more assumptions. Why? Because if I have a larger sample size, I cannot just look at the 68 plus and break them down into two different buckets, but I can even look at other demographics within that age group and say, is this right? 65 plus, how white is that group nationally? How educated is that group nationally? Where is that group nationally? Right? If you're getting all of your young responses from Florida, I mean, I'm exaggerating my point a little bit here, but it gets to the point. If you're getting all of your interviews disproportionately, at least, not all of them, but if you're disproportionately getting younger interviews from Florida, but somehow, for instance, you're getting a lot of older interviews from like New England, you're going to have a big problem. All right. And if you did have a sufficient sample size, enough to be able to break certain things down, like this, an age bucket, for instance, into subgroups, particularly with age groups, you would be able to separate the 65 to 74 and the 75 plus and make sure that within that subgroup, they are each represented correctly. And if you did that, you would some months see maybe Harris ahead by 1. You'd see maybe Trump ahead by 1. You would not see these 15-point leads or deficits for one candidate over or another like you would have perhaps in, say, 16. See, the problem is most of their modes are favoring the 65 to 74, and it's getting much harder to reach the other very important subgroup here, which is 75 plus, which at least in the 24 election, we don't know what it's going to be going forward, not yet. It was still more Trumpy. If you were a super senior, you were much more Trumpy than the 65 to 74, which was much more left wing. And other pollsters aren't doing that. Especially media and university pollsters who are getting the budget they're getting. And believe me, folks, they're getting budgets bigger than anybody that any budget that I got or Mark Mitchell got. Or the difference is they're putting that shit in their pocket. They want to take $25K and stick it in their wallet. Even more sometimes. Live caller only, $40,000, no problem. Heart research, yep, right in the pocket. They don't want to take that money and put it into the projects efficiently so that it costs more, yes, but you're going to get more robust, higher quality, sufficient sample sizes so you can make sure that your subgroups are accurately represented. And if you did that with seniors, you would have seen that, yes, seniors are moving to the left, but you're not going to make the mistake that the New York Times made, for instance, the last 2 election cycles. The New York Times had Joe Biden barely losing whites, number one, but winning among seniors. I believe it was 6 points. Memory serves me correct. They did the same thing with Kamala Harris. Which is, by the way, why they completely overstated her lead with educated whites. She, in fact, did not perform at the level that they said she would. So I'm bringing this up again and stressing the point a lot that you cannot now just take their word for it, guys. It's not good enough. You need to know that they actually did a good job. That's the wrong graph. Where's the other graph? Oh, no. Do we not have it? That's okay. Rich to the rescue. Peep this. There we go. I know it's a little harder to see. And in fact, I can actually grab this real quick. Open an image, new tab. I'll grab it and I'll throw it into the thing so you can see it much, much better. Will it have the black behind it? But either way, right now, you could see it until I get the chance to put it in a bigger graphic. You can see here 65 plus overall. What's the difference here, by the way? Well, the difference is very simple. Pew talked to a shit ton of people, a lot more than they would have spoken to when, let's say, for instance, they were going to conduct their pre-election survey. They spoke to a lot more people than that. So they were able, in the post-election survey, to say, okay, when we're doing this, in the electorate, 65 to 74. Like, by the way, the exit polls do. This is important to note. Because if you did go and look at the exit polls, you would see, man, we were like right on the money. Age detail matters. CNN exit polls, if you go down to age, where are you? By the way, Pew age. Let's just do that. I'm bringing it up. I want you guys to see this a little bit better. But let me go back up. There it is. Age detail. Where is it? Oh, they didn't hear. You have to go to the Fox analysis. They only did 50 to 64 and then 65 or older. And that's a shame. They skimped. Probably because a ton of these media outlets did have a reduced budget for the election because they did so poorly in so many of these other elections. So unfortunately, that's what's going on there. Do we have this other graphic yet? Amen. Okay, we do. Hang on. All right, so we don't need to, boom. There we go. We don't need to show the page. Right. There you can see when you actually get a correct sample, a large enough sample where you can make sure that super seniors are not 6% of the overall sample, which I have, by the way, gone over. And I did this with you guys before the election. So many of these polls that made those headlines when you actually got the data, if they would give it to you anyway, or if they made it available or would answer questions. All of those who did, which wasn't a lot, but the handful that did, we did talk about this. And I explained to you that the 75 plus is like 4% in this poll. The 75 plus is like 6% in this poll. They're not. In the electorate, they're going to be ballpark 8 to 12%. And you're damn right that makes a difference. And by the way, as it turns out, the 65 to 74 wasn't as plus Harris as everybody expected or polled, or led people to believe because of their polling. It was much more narrow. And then Trump carried the 75%, 75 plus or better. Overall, that margin was Trump 51, or the margin was Trump plus 3. It was Trump 51, Harris 48. some things to concern for Trump to be concerned with. However, this 50 to 64 age bracket was his biggest, strongest vote. The 30 to 49, Pew has it, with Harris +2. That's probably close because in truth, Trump carried the 40 to 49 age group. Karen, I was going to say, oh my God. Harris carried 30 to 39 by about 6 points. So, I mean, that's not a bad result for Pew. I mean, we're really splitting hairs here. They're saying that it's a 2-point margin. I mean, that's probably as close as you could get, folks. It's just important to understand that the 40 to 49 actually was very Trumpy, which should be a point of concern for Trump and his supporters right now. Because 50 to 64 is really the only group that still remains in Trump's corner significantly, or at least significant compared to the others. They are still significantly more Trumpy on approval. The generic ballot, which, by the way, I don't want to give too much away, but we will have a generic ballot, support the public polling project, but we will have a generic ballot. I'm trying to figure out, since those projects are not moving along as fast as we would need them to, we're trying to figure out a little bit of a solution to that. And I think it's cool. And at least it's not going to be all the time, but I think you guys are going to love when you see what we got in store for you. But we will have a generic ballot. And I'm telling you right now, this shift with seniors to Democrats, it is exaggerated, but it is real. And as of right now, the only age group that's voting Republican is the 50 to 64 age group. Big problem for Republicans is that is the second most likely group to vote. The first is 65 plus. And that is a problem. Younger voters are, I wouldn't say going back to the Democratic Party. I don't think that's accurate at all. We're starting to see some Trumpers or Trump voters, 2024 voters, kind of just disappear again. All right. Becoming difficult to poll when you get them. Some of them are just like, yeah, man, whatever, it is what it is, and they're just not at all enthusiastic or ecstatic. By the way, it was hilarious. The headline from Yahoo News when they had their final poll come out, their headline was, yeah, sure, Trump is surging in our poll. It's almost tied now, but Democrats have the enthusiasm. I mean, we have to remember this stuff. It's not just to go back and make a dig on somebody and just constantly make fun of people. I mean, guys, you can't just continue the same thing over and over again and expect a different result. Like, they say it's the definition of insanity. It's really not. That's a nice little expression, but it makes a point. Like, how stupid could you be to not remember that we've been down this road before? I find it funny. The women 50 plus, Harris barely won. If you look at some of the, because we're getting now closer to the senior vote, she barely won them. Women 50 plus. It was supposed to be this blowout with women, especially older senior women. That was it, man. She was doing better than Biden was doing. She's going to crush him. Didn't happen. And then there's also what Barnes and I have repeatedly told you guys, which is that, oh, wow, I got to do that. Okay. I mean, oof. All right. I know why. Okay. Hold on. Let's do it a different way. We've repeatedly told you that there is, a difference now, guys. The fact of the matter is people, whoops, that's the wrong one. People think people search for affirmations of their own views. I don't have to go on a boomer rant again, do I? And the fact of the matter is, boomers don't want Trump's radical transfer or radical change. They don't want it. They want to live in the twilight of their life, and they don't want to rock the boat. Unlike younger voters or middle-aged voters, and I do believe a big part of why the 50 to 64 is still Trump's biggest group, biggest or most strongest supporting group, because they're coming up on the twilight of their lives and they're running out of time, and they're seeing time running out for the country, and they're more open to big change. They're worried about their kids, maybe their future grandkids or grandkids if they have them already, which many in that age group already do. And of course, they're worried about their retirement. Will the debt blow up when I'm 70 years old and I won't be able to do anything about it because I'll be on a fixed income and I'll already had made the plans, based on the current environment I'm in, to be able to sustain myself financially, or my wife and I, or husband and I, whatever. It's a new world. And to some extent, and I'm sorry, boomers out there watching, I'm sorry, but I don't pull punches here. They're really selfish. They're a selfish group of people. They just care about what's good for them, and what comes after they're gone, they don't seem to give two shits about. Well, Rich, what about their grandkids? I don't know. Ask them. Believe me, I have yet to get an answer that is particularly satisfying. Some of them act as if America's going to be okay forever. And America could never collapse. America could never fall. There'll never be fascism or communism or whatever in America. They live in a fantasy land, some of them. And then others simply don't give a shit. It's just true. This is the generation that said they were going to revolt against the man and ultimately took cheap products, worthless degrees, higher standards of living for them, even though it was all paid for by the future generation's money, as like a payoff. It's like a cultural payoff. I mean, that is essentially what happened in our society. Manufacturing base sold off to the highest bidder. It's an uncomfortable conversation to have, but it is one that really should be had because it's true. And any pollster has done in-depth polling, focus groups, interviews themselves instead of hiring a call center in India, would know that. They do know that. Anyone who's run for office before, particularly in 22 or 24, and knocked on wealthy boomer doors to talk about a cost of living crisis or the financial solvency of our country in the future, or immigrants pouring over the border and wrecking the working man and woman's community, draining the social services that are for them. Anyone who did that in those communities would know you probably got a door in your face. Or, I don't know, I'm good. I can afford my groceries. It's true. Uncomfortable, but true. So while, again, they all love to exaggerate these trends, the fact of the matter is that trend is very real. And this is a problem that's going to harm. It's kind of like part 2 of Friday's episode. This will harm Republicans moving forward because Republicans did not spend the time after the election to do what needed to be done, to ensure that this younger coalition stayed engaged and continued to believe. Believing is motivating. Unfortunately, Republicans care more about the people who pay them on Wall Street than the voters who vote them into office. There is a post that I put up that I think some people got completely and others right over their head. I'm not alleviating Donald Trump of his responsibility for whatever missteps he made or whatever way he may have contributed to this very clear malaise, because I'm telling you, the polling is just disgusting for Republicans right now. And it's not even because there are mind changers. Don't get me wrong. There's swing voters, and they're like, I don't know, maybe I'll go back and give Democrats a chance. But that's not really their problem, because Democrats are deeply unpopular right now. The real problem is that their voters are feeling dejected. Actually, that's being fair. That's being generous. The feeling out is ranging from I feel betrayed to completely, I guess dejected would be that word. They were just like, certain things are just not happening. This is not going to happen. This is unfortunate, but it is what it is. And I'm not saying, and that post I put up, I'm not like, again, trying to give Donald Trump a pass here. I am just trying to state the reality that there's only so much that he can do because he is the president. It's not his fault. Well, actually, let me put it this way. The Congress was corrupt, including Republicans. I mean, at least Democrats, they're corrupt, but they're corrupt in a way that fits and suits their ideology and even helps them advance it. Republicans, not so much. They're frauds. That's the difference. And there were frauds before Donald Trump came on the scene. That's why Donald Trump was able to win. That's just true. If you're a Republican who doesn't like Donald Trump, you should probably get up and take your ass to the bathroom and look in the mirror, because it's your fault that Donald Trump is president, for better or for worse. You are the reason that Americans picked something else, someone else. And even though he had an R after his last name, they just didn't quite see him the same as they see your stank ass. So that was around before. Trump's contribution to it is that he is once again attempting to play ball with it too much. And he spent, I mean, it's already spent a lot of it. He spent his political capital on typical Washington kind of thinking and move making. The senators wanted some kind of military action. They cash in their IOU from a vote for Health and Human Services or a vote for the defense secretary or whatever it may be. They cash in their IOU for that. And unfortunately, the damage done to that by that is just like irreparable. Now, I'm not saying it can't be repaired. I do think it can be. It's just going to be so hard at this point. And I'm just being real with you. So honestly, what Republicans, since they failed to do what I said, which is to make sure that these voters stay engaged and that they continue to believe, now they'll have to go negative. That's the only way. They'll have to go negative. It's ready. That's what that was. They'll have to get Democrats also lacking the enthusiasm in order to get the electorate to look a little bit more favorable to them. It will not be enough to run on their own achievements, because frankly, there's so many that too many different groups feel like they didn't get done. Or worse, there are some that they don't even support. There are Trump voters who don't support the National Guard going into these cities. And that's not even my hill to die on, so don't give me a hard time over it. Some people always get it messed up. And as you know, and so many of our regular viewers, I see you guys interact with some of these people on like Twitter or even locals. Now that we get, trolled there. But you know what I'm doing. I'm simply relaying public sentiment. And people act as if like I'm giving my personal opinion or something. And they like attack you over it. Like, bruh. Calm down, bruh. Don't shoot the messenger. You don't like the message? I don't know what to tell you. Tough shit. It's not my opinion. I'm telling you what people think. And some are not down with this. They're not. Now, using the military for immigration, totally different story. Major win at the Supreme Court, by the way. Major. Kavanaugh, though. What a cheese stick. Madam producer going to yell at me. He's a cheese neck. These people, man. It's unbelievable. It's unbelievable how these people are. Boom. Bang. There we go. What the hell happened to my thing? There it is. Thank you. Lights, camera, action. Jeez, it looked terrible in that shot. It's the same thing every 4 years. You can only twist the knife so many times before the voters turn their backs. That's what's going on here. And then I got to be honest, Base. Trump doesn't help here. He doesn't help. I think Trump could save more Republican seats by essentially running against the Republican Party at this point. There's a way to do it. Listen, guys, it's not my fault. This party's filled with frauds. I'm trying to get rid of them. This guy's all right, though. Vote for him. I really think that would work better than the angle that they're trying to take right now. I just don't see it working. People aren't going to believe something else because you're telling them to believe something else. They're not going to think that you're doing so great on the economy because you keep saying you're doing great on the economy. GDP looks good. Very good for you. Jobless claims spiked. And then you didn't kick out the look. You don't think the Bureau of Labor Statistics is being honest? Well, congratulations. Me either. So fire the damn vendor and replace them with somebody who knows how to conduct a survey correctly. I gave them 4 names. They keep allowing liberal people to do this shit. It's crazy. But it doesn't matter anyway, because I'm telling you, I go to the grocery store. I'm not so bougie, and my wife and I are not like so up on the hog here that we don't go and friggin' shop ourselves. Meat at Publix is super expensive. The cost of things is not. The cost of living has not significantly improved. And he has made it very easy for them to blame the tariffs for it. And it's working. It's working. Doesn't matter. You can't point to a tariff to show me why that freaking rib roast, which used to be on sale for $7.99, is now $13.99. I know you can't. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what's right or what's accurate or what's real. It only matters what they make real or what they make people believe to be real. That's the game a lot of people on the right don't understand they're playing. And it's crazy to me. Like, where have you been? And some of them are noobs, These like critics that are constantly, well, if you don't, for Donald Trump all day, you're a bad person. Yeah, it's my fault they're going to lose the House of Representatives. Okay, get the hell out of here. It's my fault. What's my audience right now? Thousands? How the hell am I doing that? My audience isn't even, my current live audience isn't even the size of a full congressional district. What the hell are you talking about? Catch me on election night. That's a different story. Jeez. Okay, just let that go. It's just the doctor. They can leave a message, which I know it's almost 3:00 anyway. Look, do what you can to support the public polling project for Rizzle. Okay, it's in the description. Pass it around. I hate to put this one up here, but I really want to put this comment from Jay up. I feel like they're totally right. It's gotta be said. It's got to be said. If this wasn't true, I wouldn't be hearing about Epstein from old people. It's true. It's true. It's true. Like seniors all of a sudden care about Epstein and shit or something. Like, it's because MSNBC is running it nonstop. Because, of course, they opened the door for it. Let me just say this, though, about Thomas Massie. Because I don't think we got a chance to talk about that since that press conference. I tend to like leave Massie alone because I just think it's not worth putting the money in and try to defeat him. I think you're pretty likely to get embarrassed. But this guy is not a serious guy. This is a guy who only cares about budgets and deficits when Republicans are president, and he can actually take a stand without any real consequences, right? When Joe Biden's in office and they're pushing forward the omnibus or the Inflation Reduction Act, which was nothing but a green new scam and a bunch of Democratic spending items and agenda item kickbacks to their donors and coalition members, he votes to get it through committee. No problem. See, there would have been real consequences. It would have been a real fight. Massie didn't have the spine for it. He didn't seem to care about the budget then. But he cares when Donald Trump's trying to pass tax cuts or making sure that we all don't get hit with a massive tax increase. Guys, I don't know about you, but that tax increase would have hurt like me and my family. And we're not, again, over here living up on Mount Olympus. Believe me, that would have hurt. So he trots out these victims and puts on this show. I found the whole thing to be disgusting example of grandstanding, like to the point where we need a new name for grandstanding. Like, I don't know. I mean, that's not quite grand. There's grandstanding all the time. Like, so many politicians do it. This was like, we need a new word for a disgusting and immoral, like overtly immoral version of grandstanding. This is gross. It was gross. It was gross. Guy's been good on a lot of stuff. Maha, free speech. But that was nasty, man. There's a very real concern a bunch of people could get Alan Dershowitz. Let's just call it. Let's make it a verb. You don't want to get Dershowitz, man. What? When you get presented as the perpetrator, but you're really the victim of some fake rape allegation. Gross. Ro Khanna, by the way, I actually, I got to be honest with you guys. I take him as a genuine guy. I really would implore you, Ro, to rethink this, Congressman. Ro, rethink this, bro. If you were in that shit, you wouldn't want this bill. Parading out those girls like that. When so many of them, and you haven't read the files, so you don't know. So many of them have been completely debunked by the FBI. You're going to destroy lives for nothing. Which is what Donald Trump should have just told the freaking country. Hey, guess what, guys? Listen, I know I want to see it too, but this is the same corrupt FBI and the same corrupt intel people that brought you Russia Hoax 1.0, 2.0, Arthur Anderson, this scam, that scam, Michael Flynn. Left 2 people sitting in jail for Whitey Bulger's murder for 20 years. Nudged guys from the Nation of Islam in Newark to kill Malcolm X. You know, those guys. Well, they fudged the hell out of these records. And I don't want to hurt innocent people. So give us some time. It's going to take some time to get to the bottom of this. That's all Donald Trump had to say. Finito.
I think you would have gotten a pass for like the rest of your term. It never would have come up again. He could have rode that to 2028, baby. Leave it for JD. Sorry, JD. Leave it for him. Oh my God, it's 3:03 already. Right. So stress. Let's get back to the points of this here. What happened to the senior vote? Is it super democratic? No. And in fact, it is getting more democratic, and we could probably expect some narrow margins for Democrats on national levels, probably fairly soon. They have been winning the senior vote in special elections. That's several occasions we've seen that. But overall, what's happening here is not some kind of knee-jerk reaction in MAGA, or at least it's not in totality. There are, of course, some who are comfortable living with the life that they have, and they don't care what happens to the country when they're freaking worm food. Sorry. But that's not it. This is a much more educated and much more liberal demographic that has slid into the senior demographic. They did not do what the Mondale voter before them did, or the Humphreys voter. What's that, Rich? Get more conservative, or significantly more conservative. And actually, in truth, they have, because go look 20 years ago. Where were some of them 20 years ago when they were in the 40s voting for Al Gore? So they did shift to the right. It's just not as right-wing as they were before. And the pollsters are getting it wrong because they suck, but also for all of the reasons we discussed. Inadequate sample size, the inability to break down different age buckets into subgroups, make sure that subgroups are represented correctly. Super seniors are not for 6% of the overall sample of 65 plus, which happens all the time. They're hard to reach. They're hard to talk to, folks. They don't see the numbers on the phone right. They don't like to take online surveys. They're like, the hell, man, I can't read this shit. And they sure as hell don't like to go back and forth on peer-to-peer texting. It's very difficult to get an adequate number of interviews. Just is. But you got to do it, even if it costs you more money, because that's the only way to be right. And that's what people deserve. Accuracy. All right. With that in mind, I'll leave you. Adieu. Oh, wait. I did miss two things. Crazed I-73. Rich, Scott Pressler is saying the same as you. Yes, I did see a video. Thank the Lord, some people are coming around. Scott Pressler is indeed now. Scott, you're weeks behind here, but the truth is he's not. He's only crazed. He's only weeks behind on he's only weeks publicly. Privately, Scott immediately after the election came to me and said, I want to win New Jersey. We can't take our foot off the gas. If we don't do this, like if we don't continue to do what we did for Donald Trump, we're not going to be able to win these elections. He knew that from the beginning. Andrew, every poll from Real Clear Politics I don't trust is real, fake. You grab that URL, shove it into the Wayback Machine, and ta-da! That's actually that's actually kind of true, guys. It's not RCP's fault. If you go back and check, you'll see the AP, Wall Street Journal, a bunch of them have done it in the past. CNN did it, Andrew, through their Gillum +3 in there that nobody ever read, right? And what are we talking about? Guys, if you wait until after an election, you will see that they will change dramatically what they have initially reported. Even results. They'll say, oh, we actually conducted a poll 2 days later, and they'll put that in there, and it won't even match what's originally reported. They are scum. AP is the worst, I believe, Andrew, because they break the URLs. So the Biden +14, you can't find it. No, I mean, you can, but you got to go back. You got to do what you said. You got to take that link and put it in the Wayback Machine, and then you can find it. Clinton. I think Clinton was plus 13 with the AP North Pole. The AP North Pole is one of the worst polls out there. They have never been right. Never. Not one time they were right. Not maybe 2 times they were right. Never. And when I'm talking about wrong, I'm talking about double-digit wrong. Overstating Hillary Clinton by 11 points. Overstating Joe Biden by nearly 10. And if you go back and you look at the 2024 polling from AP, Andrew, which you also can't find anymore linked on Real Clear Politics, that link is broken. You have to go back and do way back searches. You will see that not only were they wrong about the outcome of the election, Harris obviously did not win by 4 points, or maybe 6, actually, the AP. They got every single issue wrong. Every single issue. Harris now trusted more on the economy. Voters tied on who can handle inflation better. No way. So they were just wrong about everything. Yep. That's a good point. That's a really good point. I'm glad you brought that up because that is 100% true. They do it all the time. Don't tell me it's not propaganda if you're doing that after. How could you possibly claim it's not propaganda if you're doing shit like that after the election? Come on. Give me a break. All right, remove that from studio. Remove that from studio. Yeah, stop screen. Okay. So with that in mind, I'll leave you guys. I got to go get a little Rugrat, I guess. Maybe some lunch after. I'm sure he would want some pizza. He loves pizza. Get him his little pizza. He'd be so happy. But yeah, I hope you guys have a great rest of the afternoon. Remember to check the pollster's record when you see the giant headline. And if like the New York Times comes out and talks about a giant shift with senior voters, you could say, why would we believe you? You were wrong about the senior vote in 2024. And by the way, have you changed your methodology because you were wrong? And are you now chasing the weight? All right. I feel like I'm forgetting something here, but I guess not. I really do feel like I'm forgetting announce an appearance or something. But if I am, you know how we normally roll. I'll tell you 5 minutes before that I forgot. All right, guys. None but love for you. Thanks for watching, as always, really, from the bottom of our heart. Don't forget to share. The best place to follow me, as always, is actually on Locals. peoplespundit.locals.com. peoplespundit.locals.com. All right, guys. I'm out. Have a great rest of the day.